Ayase, an ordinary male protagonist, accidentally discovers the secret of Nogizaka, a noble academy's beauty. The story starts a few days ago, when Ayase, watching an anime late at night, couldn't help but criticize it. He currently lives with his sister, a teacher, and her best friend, also a teacher. Often they make him cook for them. Despite their good looks, both teachers are quite messy in their personal lives, which leads to frequent crazy drinking episodes. This has caused Ayase to develop a fear of women and led to rumors about his orientation. On his way to school, Ayase and his 3 close friends hear familiar piano sounds, praising their school's goddess, Nogizaka. Rumored to own millions in assets and skilled in both arts and sports, Nogizaka is very popular at the academy. She has received hundreds of confessions, all rejected. Nogizaka, a wealthy young lady, turns out to be Ayase's classmate. Upon entering the classroom, Ayase can't help but glance at Nogizaka. Their classmate Asakura approaches Ayase, asking if he watched the recommended anime, which Ayase had seen. He was neutral about the anime. Asakura then pulls out the original magazine of the anime, and mentions that he has requested the library to stock it. Due to its high cost, not all issues were purchased, but the requested ones were special editions with a bonus figurine. Overhearing their conversation, Nogizaka slams the desk, then quickly apologizes to everyone around. Later that afternoon, a broadcast asks Asakura to return the magazine to the library. Asakura, having an urgent matter, asks Ayase to return it for him. Ayase rushes to the library, returns the magazine, and then sees Nogizaka sneakily enter and borrow an anime magazine, though he couldn't see which one. Nogizaka, feeling guilty, accidentally knocked over a bookshelf, revealing the anime magazine she was holding and toppling the library shelves. Realizing her manga reading was exposed, Nogizaka was devastated and left her backpack behind as she ran out in tears. Ayase, left standing with the anime magazine, was stunned, but relieved the library didn't blame him. He took Nogizaka's backpack with him, realizing from her distraught appearance that she, like Asakura, was an anime fan. The next day, Ayase went to school early, cautious not to let others see him with Nogizaka's backpack. Just as he reached the school gate, he encountered Nogizaka. Ayase returned her backpack, but from then on, Nogizaka avoided him, not daring to meet his eyes. At school, the popular Nogizaka shunned him, and at home, Ayase faced his sister and her friend's torment, feeling rather miserable. The following day, Nogizaka accidentally bumped into Ayase and burst into tears upon seeing him, nearly making Ayase the school's enemy. Ayase decided to clear the air with Nogizaka, but she ran away whenever she saw him, leading others to think Ayase was attacking her. Nogizaka's friends immediately stopped Ayase, who ended up embarrassingly climbing to the rooftop where he surprisingly found Nogizaka. Nogizaka was avoiding Ayase, worried he would think less of her for watching anime as a high school student. At the time, being a fan, though becoming more accepted, was still not mainstream. Ayase assured Nogizaka he wouldn't tell anyone her secret, saying he didn't see anything wrong with being an anime fan. He promised to keep her secret, emphasizing that to him, Nogizaka was just Nogizaka, and liking anime was merely a hobby. This made Ayase feel a step closer to Nogizaka, who was actually quite happy. Nogizaka was a bit embarrassed by his comment, but appreciated being understood. She was very grateful to Ayase. When Ayase returned home and saw his sister and teacher acting crazy, he couldn't help but sigh. Then, he received a call from Nogizaka. She had forgotten to return a book the previous afternoon, and tonight was the final deadline. If missed, Nogizaka would be publicly named at school the next morning, similar to a broadcast announcement like Asakura's, which could socially doom her. Afraid to go to the school alone at night, she asked Ayase to accompany her. Ayase, already fond of Nogizaka, naturally agreed. The school at night was a bit spooky, but the atmosphere was congenial as they chatted on their way to the library and successfully erased her name. Just as they were about to replace the book, they heard a strange noise in the library. Ayase held Nogizaka's hand to reassure her and bravely went towards the sound, finding a lost cell phone. Ironically, the one his sister's friend had been looking for at home. Ayase picked it up and noticed Nogizaka was so scared her legs had gone weak. He chuckled and helped her up, and they left the library together, with Nogizaka initiating a greeting. They had now become friends. The next day, Ayase started to explore the anime both Nogizaka and Asakura enjoyed. Midway, Nogizaka, who he thought was usually driven to school, stopped him. She confirmed she did have a ride but lived close enough to walk, which was also good for her fitness. They enjoyed their conversation, but Nogizaka's fans were nearly glaring daggers at Ayase by then. Seeing how close Ayase and Nogizaka were, the fans almost chased after Ayase. The two had to run away. Nogizaka called it their secret, which made Ayase somewhat happy. Then, Nogizaka asked if Ayase was free on Sunday. Surprised by the quick progress, Ayase listened as Nogizaka shyly mentioned she wanted to shop, but felt embarrassed to go alone. Ayase's heart skipped a beat. Oh no, otaku shopping. Sure enough, Nogizaka wanted to go to Akihabara. Ayase remembered shopping there as a child with his friend Asakura, who used him merely as a bag carrier, leaving him exhausted and vowing never to return. However, he couldn't refuse Nogizaka's request and ended up going with her to Akihabara over the weekend. Unlike Asakura, Nogizaka had prepared a route and planned to visit several places, ultimately aiming to buy a gaming console. Ayase surprisingly found that Nogizaka wasn't good at drawing, a charming imperfection contrary to her seemingly perfect image. Nogizaka felt that buying the gaming console first would fulfill her purpose, but browsing around first seemed more fulfilling and satisfying. She first visited a bookstore filled with fanzines, where she embarrassingly put a book down after a shocking start, and Ayase helped her out. Unnoticed, Asakura left the bookstore satisfied. Ayase continued to accompany Nogizaka as she admired various figures and merchandise, but hesitated to buy them. Puzzled, Ayase asked why she wouldn't purchase what she liked. Nogizaka bitterly smiled and shook her head, revealing her budget was limited because her father controlled her spending strictly, not allocating funds for her otaku interests. So, the funds for Nogizaka's anime-related shopping were all painstakingly saved by herself. She would just look at figurines normally. Ayase wondered why Nogizaka liked anime. She explained that about 5 or 6 years ago, after being scolded by her father, she was playing sadly in a nearby park. A boy she didn't know gave her a book, the first edition of the anime magazine she had borrowed before. It was her first encounter with such books, and before she knew it, she was hooked. While they were discussing this, Asakura spotted Ayase and rushed over to greet him. Ayase quickly hid Nogizaka. Asakura didn't see Nogizaka's face and thought Ayase was on a date with his girlfriend, then hurried off to buy a gaming console. Ayase turned to find Nogizaka, but discovered she was gone. Frantically searching, he accidentally bumped into a pink-haired girl named Amamiya. After apologizing, Amamiya, knowing he was looking for a lady of a distinguished appearance, guessed Ayase had a crush on her and pointed him towards a corner alley where she saw Nogizaka. Ayase thanked her and rushed to the alley, only to find Nogizaka surrounded by a group of burly men. Concerned she was being harassed, he charged over. It turned out the men were foreigners who were lost, and Nogizaka, who spoke their language, was helping them find their way. After reuniting, they said goodbye to the men. Nogizaka, excitedly, took Ayase to a gachapon shop. Ayase told her the capsules weren't expensive, and she could try some. Unexpectedly, Nogizaka got hooked and ended up getting a bunch. Their next stop was a cafe for a meal. Upon arriving, Ayase realized it was a maid cafe and quickly rushed outside. When he returned, he found that the staff had asked Nogizaka to try on a maid outfit. Ayase blushed instantly when he saw Nogizaka in the outfit. The staff enthusiastically helped, urging Ayase to compliment his girlfriend, and even took a photo of them together. Afterwards, both Ayase and Nogizaka couldn't help but laugh, feeling that they had a lot of fun today. Next on their agenda was buying a game console, but upon arriving at the store, they were told it was all sold out with no restock date in sight. This deeply upset Nogizaka, who couldn't even stand up. Ayase gritted his teeth and picked Nogizaka up. Onlookers whistled and teased them. Nogizaka, embarrassed by being carried, felt bad about not getting the console and causing trouble for Ayase. She wondered if Ayase found her bothersome. Ayase quickly comforted her, saying he had a great time because she invited him out. He gave her the photo of them together, adding another secret to their collection. Nogizaka, moved to tears, received a handkerchief from Ayase. This scene felt familiar to him, like it had happened before. Indeed, the boy who gave the magazine to Nogizaka was Ayase, though he had forgotten about it. Just as he was about to remember, a call from his sister interrupted him. Worried about delaying Ayase, Nogizaka hurried him to the station and accidentally ran into a tree. Ayase couldn't help but laugh. To make it up to her, he invited Nogizaka to try the gachapon machine, where she won the character she wanted most. Seeing Nogizaka's joyful smile made Ayase blush again. Recently, Nogizaka had asked Ayase if he had been studying and planned to invite him to study together. She even drew a map to her house for him. While her handwriting was beautiful, her drawing was quite poor. A girl with twin ponytails passed by and couldn't help but shake her head at the sight of the map. She then drew a new one for Ayase and told him she'd see him later. Ayase, confused, still managed to find Nogizaka's house following the map. Although he knew Nogizaka's family was wealthy, he didn't expect their place to be so large. A maid came out to greet him and advised him not to go to the wrong place, as getting lost in the forest could be dangerous. It took an additional 30 minutes to walk from the gate to Nogizaka's room, leaving Ayase stunned, while the maid named Sakurazaka didn't even break a sweat. Ayase wondered if he was too weak. Under Nogizaka's guidance, Ayase entered the room and noticed there were no anime posters, as Nogizaka kept her hobbies hidden from her family due to her strict father, who believed anime was unhelpful for children's development and would tear up any posters he found. Nogizaka informed Ayase that her parents were not home that day, so they could relax while studying. However, Ayase got distracted, and when they reached for an eraser at the same time, their hands touched, making them both feel embarrassed. Just then, someone burst into the room. It was the twin ponytails girl Ayase had met earlier. Her name was Minatsu, Nogizaka's younger sister. Curious about her sister bringing a boy home for the first time, Minatsu took Ayase aside for a talk. Minatsu had noticed Nogizaka making the map and knew they had gone to Akihabara together. She asked Ayase if he was aware of Nogizaka's secret. Ayase nodded, asking how Minatsu found out. Minatsu explained that although Nogizaka tried hard to hide it, it was obvious to outsiders. The only person in the family who didn't know the truth was their strict father. Minatsu was pleased to learn from Ayase that he did not judge Nogizaka harshly and was satisfied with his attitude towards her. Nogizaka walked out of her room and saw Ayase and Minatsu hugging. Ayase quickly explained, but Nogizaka showed no emotion. Minatsu told Ayase that Nogizaka was slow to react in such situations. Minatsu approved of Ayase, and after their study sessions, they faced exams. With Nogizaka's help, Ayase felt confident about the finals. Nogizaka asked Ayase if he had plans for the summer and proposed going to a summer doujinshi fair together. Ayase, having no other plans and unclear about what a doujinshi fair was, agreed to go if Nogizaka was okay with it. Just then, a boy running past bumped into Nogizaka, causing her anime catalog to fall out of her bag. People around them started gossiping, surprised that the campus goddess watched anime and calling it childish. Seeing the situation turn sour, Ayase feigned surprise and claimed the magazine was his and that Nogizaka must have found it. This shifted the conversation, and people began calling Ayase a typical otaku with vulgar interests before dispersing quickly. Nogizaka took a leave of absence, feeling her life might be ruined. When Ayase went to school, he heard rumors blaming him for dragging Nogizaka down, and she was too embarrassed to come to school. He even found threatening notes in his locker calling him a disgusting otaku, and a senior warned him that he should stay away from Nogizaka, accusing him of secretly enjoying looking at suspiciously pretty figurines. Ayase sighed, unbothered by the weak attacks, and didn't understand the stigma against otakus. To him, Nogizaka was still Nogizaka, just with an additional hobby. Regarding being talked about like that, Ayase wanted to visit Nogizaka that night. He learned from Minatsu that since returning home 3 days ago, Nogizaka hadn't eaten or drunk anything and had locked herself in her room. Minatsu suspected Ayase might have done something to Nogizaka, but he quickly denied it. Minatsu then wondered if Nogizaka's secret had been exposed, comparing it to a past incident. Ayase explained he had managed to bluff his way through the anime catalog incident, but Nogizaka probably hadn't caught on. Minatsu shared the past incident with Ayase, and then the four went to Nogizaka's room. Using reverse psychology, Minatsu tricked Nogizaka into coming out. Realizing the deception, a shy Nogizaka retreated back. Ayase quickly tried to reassure her at the door, saying he had handled the anime catalog situation. However, Nogizaka objected, knowing the treatment she'd face for liking anime. and not wanting Ayase to endure the same pain. "What's wrong with liking anime? It's not like we're eating their rice," Ayase joked, suggesting that in over a decade, being in the fandom would be fashionable. Minatsu told Ayase that in junior high, Nogizaka had accidentally revealed her otaku nature in front of the whole school, leading to being pointed at and eventually losing her best friend, forcing her to transfer schools. This experience made Nogizaka fear revealing her otaku identity even more. Ayase, knowing Nogizaka liked anime and showing no judgment, was one reason Minatsu approved of him. Nogizaka feared Ayase being judged by others. Ayase argued that if friends left over this, they weren't good friends at all. Nogizaka admitted her fear of being alone. Kneeling down, Ayase asked if she would leave him for liking anime. Nogizaka immediately shook her head no. Ayase said that as long as Nogizaka still wanted to be his friend, how could he say he had no friends? He felt the same way about her. Even if the whole world found Nogizaka's anime watching disgusting, he would still be her friend and would never let her be alone. Moved, Nogizaka hugged Ayase and asked him to always stay by her side. "All right, I'm jealous. I'm into anime too, why don't I have such luck?" The next day, Ayase and Nogizaka went to school as usual and planned to go to a summer doujinshi convention together. However, a senior who had previously tried to intimidate Ayase appeared again. When the senior spoke ill of Ayase, Nogizaka didn't hesitate to throw him over her shoulder and admitted that the anime magazine was hers. With Ayase's support, she was no longer afraid of being pointed at. That day, Minatsu, along with Ayase, Nogizaka, and their maids, followed Nogizaka's personal maid, Sakurazaka, because she seemed a bit down recently. Nogizaka discussed this with Ayase alone, but Ayase thought Sakurazaka's expression was always like that. However, Minatsu and another maid, Nanami, felt something was off with Sakurazaka, which led to the four of them tailing her. Nogizaka mentioned she and Minatsu had grown up with Sakurazaka, so she was familiar with her emotional changes. The group saw Sakurazaka enter a toy store, revealing that despite her cold exterior, she actually loved dolls. They watched as she bought a large bunny doll. Just then, Asakura approached from behind. Ayase, worried he might recognize Nogizaka, quickly blocked Asakura's path. At that moment, Nanami mimicked a voice actress's voice and successfully lured Asakura away. The four continued to follow Sakurazaka, who sighed again and entered a department store. They hurried after her, only to find Sakurazaka in a lingerie store. Ayase, embarrassed, said he couldn't enter such a place and hastily left the building. Nogizaka hesitated about following Ayase, who had just left the building, and bumped into Amamiya, whom he had met earlier in Akihabara. Amamiya remarked that meeting again was fate, and that a third encounter would be more than coincidence. "Ah, Japan is so small. Isn't it normal to meet 3 times?" Amamiya greeted and left. Nogizaka then ran after Ayase, thinking it pitiful to leave him alone. At that moment, Ayase and Nogizaka noticed Sakurazaka leaving the mall alone. Strangely, Nanami and Minatsu did not come out. They were busy picking new clothes and had not noticed Sakurazaka's departure. Ayase and Nogizaka decided to follow her. On the way, Nogizaka reminisced about not having shopped with Sakurazaka for a long time. Just then, a drunk teacher, Yukari, stumbled over, insisting on joining Ayase. Smelling the alcohol, Ayase knew she would speak recklessly at home, so he quickly took Nogizaka and left, but they lost track of Sakurazaka. After searching, they found Sakurazaka in a cafe. They thought about waiting outside for her to come out. Nogizaka mentioned that she and Sakurazaka had visited this cafe before and that the black tea was very good. Because Nogizaka had praised the tea, Sakurazaka had seriously noted down the brewing method. While they were talking, Ayase's sister came over, having heard about Ayase and Nogizaka from her friend Yukari. The sister, due to a work-related tasting event nearby, had been waiting for Yukari to return, but unexpectedly saw Ayase and Nogizaka. Curious about their relationship, and noticing Ayase's protective nature, she was impressed and earnestly told Nogizaka that Ayase was a bit clumsy and would need her care, seemingly very satisfied with Nogizaka. Afterwards, they continued to follow Sakurazaka. On the way, Nogizaka admired how impressive her sister looked and expressed a desire to become a strong woman like her. Ayase, recalling his sister's drunken state at home, found it hard to judge. He and Nogizaka followed Sakurazaka and saw her enter a bridal shop with a man. Nogizaka couldn't believe it. Was Sakurazaka getting married? She instinctively walked a few steps towards the bridal shop, but was caught by a staff member who dragged both Nogizaka and Ayase inside. Without a word, they dressed Ayase in a suit. Before he could explain, he turned to see Nogizaka, also dressed in a wedding gown. They ended up taking wedding photos together, mistakenly. Another staff member rushed over, explaining the appointment had just arrived. The embarrassed employee offered a special service by taking a photo of Nogizaka and Ayase together. They left with the photo, but completely lost track of Sakurazaka. Nogizaka, looking at the wedding photo, wondered if they were interfering with Sakurazaka's life. Perhaps Sakurazaka wanted to marry but was hesitant to leave them. Nogizaka didn't want Sakurazaka to give up her happiness, so they went to talk to her. They learned from Sakurazaka she hadn't entered the bridal shop, but went to a hardware store above it. The man was the store manager, looking troubled because his chainsaw was broken. It turned out Ayase and Nogizaka had misunderstood everything. Sakurazaka was touched that they cared so much. Nogizaka immediately hugged Sakurazaka, crying. At that moment, Minatsu and others returned from shopping and found the wedding photo of Ayase and Nogizaka, teasing them about it. On his way to school, Ayase encountered Asakura checking club memberships. He warned Asakura not to read while walking to avoid bumping into someone. Asakura dodged, but Ayase ended up running into someone. Turning around, he recognized the familiar pink hair. It was Amamiya, the girl they had met before. Surprisingly, she had transferred to Ayase's school and, coincidentally, to his class. The homeroom teacher had seated Amamiya next to Ayase. Amamiya greeted Ayase, which puzzled Nogizaka, who asked if Ayase knew her. Seeing Amamiya's smile towards Ayase, Nogizaka's radar went off. Amamiya was beautiful, a vibrant girl with short hair, good grades, excelled in sports, and even aced home economics. She was cheerful and quickly got along with the classmates. When summer vacation came, the classmates remembered the new transfer student. Amamiya, seeing Nogizaka, rushed over, expressing great admiration. She mentioned that everyone who played the piano knew of Nogizaka, who had won a piano competition representing Japan. Soon, the school hosted a swimming competition where each student had to sign up for an event. Someone suggested Amamiya join the relay race, thinking she would be good at swimming since she excelled at basketball. Amamiya reluctantly agreed, but Ayase noticed her uneasy expression. He and Nogizaka inquired and learned she was not good at swimming, but had agreed to the relay race to avoid refusing. Amamiya wasn't afraid of being mocked for her lack of skills. She was just worried about holding the team back. So, Nogizaka and Ayase decided to help her by asking the teacher for pool access for training over the weekend. During training, Amamiya blushed when she saw Nogizaka, making it clear she had a crush. Under Ayase and Nogizaka's guidance, she began training in the pool. During this, their teacher Yukari and Minatsu, along with the maids Nanami and Sakurazaka, also came by. Before leaving, the plan was to train Amamiya. However, it turned into a pool party with many people. Even Ayase's sister came to grill by the poolside. Amamiya was amused by them, but training continued. She practiced hard with the swimming competition approaching. Before the event, Ayase and others gave Amamiya one final training session, cheering her on from the shore. She made it to the shore successfully, and as they went to help her out, Ayase slipped and fell into the pool with Nogizaka, causing all three to laugh. The next day, the swimming competition started. Everyone completed their events. Amamiya, now somewhat confident from the training, was still nervous before her race. Ayase noticed her alone and decided to talk to her, reassuring her that she had prepared well and just needed to give her best. Encouraged, Amamiya entered the race. She started well, but during a turn, her leg cramped. Despite the crowd and the presence of lifeguards and many onlookers who could have helped, Ayase unnecessarily jumped in to assist her. This part of the story felt a bit forced. Ayase took Amamiya to the medical room where Yukari confirmed the cramp. Despite the disappointing race, Yukari asked Ayase to comfort Amamiya. Ayase went to the changing room and accidentally walked in on Amamiya changing. Startled, Amamiya quickly pulled the curtain shut but did not send Ayase away. Regrettably, Amamiya felt she had let down Ayase and Nogizaka, who had helped her train. "Sister, Maybe put on your clothes before we talk? Ayase consoled Amamiya, saying that winning wasn't everything. They all knew she had trained hard. Amamiya was very touched. At this moment, other classmates rushed in to comfort her. "Give her some space and put your clothes on first," someone said. Nogizaka and Ayase exchanged a smile. After school, Nogizaka was worried Amamiya might be hurt, so she had Nanami drive Amamiya home. Amamiya was grateful and felt a bit shy about thanking Ayase, not realizing she was already developing feelings for him. As Ayase and Nogizaka walked home, Nogizaka complimented Ayase for his heroic rescue, but felt uneasy remembering Ayase holding Amamiya. Ayase assured her that he would rescue her too if she were in danger, which made Nogizaka smile. Asakura thought Ayase would also attend the summer doujinshi fair, and specifically pointed it out to him. Curious, Ayase asked what it was exactly. Asakura explained it's where people sell their game creations or doujinshi, a major event for otaku. Ayase imagined a festival scene. Asakura reminded him not to underestimate comic conventions. Later, Ayase declined Amamiya's invitation for the next day, remembering Nogizaka's advice about the event at the International Exhibition Center. The expo starts at 10 a.m., and Nogizaka suggested arriving an hour early to avoid the crowd. Ayase nodded, thinking this time they wouldn't miss out on buying anything. Nogizaka wanted to buy a doujinshi from a group known for their cat bus stop. Ayase looked at Nogizaka's plan and Asakura's reminder, wondering if Asakura was exaggerating. Laughing, he thought about Asakura waking up at 4 a.m. for cosplay, proving Asakura's point was valid. The next day, Ayase desperately squeezed onto the subway and was carried off by the crowd. He managed to meet up with Nogizaka and realized that the huge crowd was there for the summer doujinshi fair, proving Asakura was honest. They didn't know how many people were ahead in line, and getting the desired doujinshi would require a quick dash once the doors opened. However, Nogizaka mentioned that running was prohibited at the venue, among other rules. At 10 a.m., when the doors opened, they could hear the footsteps of those at the front entering. It took a while before Ayase and his group could get inside. This time, Nogizaka was cautious and wanted to buy the desired book first. Due to the crowd, they ended up being squeezed together. Seeing Nogizaka confused and nearly hitting a wall again, Ayase reached out to guide her by the hand as they entered. "Can you two stop showing affection in front of fans?" someone commented, jokingly warning them of the FFF group. Once inside, Ayase and Nogizaka were drawn to many doujinshi. Fortunately, Ayase remembered to head to the cat bus stop first. When they got there, they still had to queue. Just as they reached the front, a fan cut in line and took the last copy, leaving Nogizaka devastated. Ayase was furious, questioning why queue cutting was allowed. Nogizaka shook her head, suggesting they leave without causing trouble. Realizing his overreaction, Ayase apologized to the stall owner, and they left, disappointed. Just outside, a man called out to them and handed them the cat bus stop doujinshi, saying he didn't want them to have regrets at the fair and to protect the beautiful dreams of the anime world. The man left smoothly. Unbeknownst to them, this man was actually Nanami in disguise, and Minatsu had caught the line cutter earlier. Minatsu returned the money to the fan and gave the book to a disguised Nanami to deliver. Meanwhile, Ayase and Nogizaka continued to enjoy the convention. Soon, Nogizaka was captivated by the doujinshi, while Ayase ran into his close friend, Asakura. Asakura asked if Ayase felt relaxed at the convention. Looking around at the enthusiastic stall owners and fans, Ayase agreed, feeling that here, everyone shared common interests. He then reminded Asakura about any uncollected books, prompting Asakura to hurry off. After watching Asakura leave, Ayase went to find Nogizaka, who had picked up a doujinshi at a booth. To her embarrassment, it turned out to be a male copper manga. Ayase helped her move aside as she blushed deeply. They then wandered into the commercial area, where Nogizaka fainted upon seeing an age-restricted image. Ayase took her outside, finding many cosplayers and photographers. Nogizaka, cheered up, approached to spectate, but ended up being mistaken for a cosplayer and photographed, which made her uncomfortable since the photos could cause issues. Ayase stepped in to protect her, encountering some photographers who were reluctant to stop and even thought Ayase was just showing off. Then, Minatsu and others, dressed in cosplay, intervened to help. Nogizaka appreciated Ayase's support, and they shared a smile. After finishing their visit, They took a bus home, enjoying the convention. The bus was crowded, pushing them into a corner where Nogizaka, a bit embarrassed, hugged Ayase, warming up their relationship. After dropping Nogizaka off, Ayase encountered Minatsu and 2 others. Minatsu asked if anyone strange had followed him today. Ayase joked it was only them following him. Despite sensing something was amiss, Minatsu didn't share her concerns with Ayase. Later, Ayase received a call from Minatsu about her sister having an accident. Just then, the doorbell rang, and to his surprise, it was Nogizaka looking for him. Nogizaka's visit to the anime convention was discovered by her father, who also found anime merchandise she had secretly purchased. Believing anime to symbolize decadence, her father destroyed her collection and ordered his staff to find Nogizaka, who had run away from home. Distraught, Nogizaka cried in Ayase's arms, deeply upsetting him. Sakurazaka, who respects Nogizaka's wishes, followed and declared she would stay with Nogizaka if she chose not to return home. Ayase's sister, upon learning the situation, decided to let Nogizaka stay at their house, as their parents were abroad and they had spare rooms. Concerned about causing trouble, Nogizaka hesitated, but Ayase reassured her. Thus, Nogizaka and Sakurazaka temporarily moved in. During dinner, Sakurazaka complimented Ayase's cooking skills, joking about him being a great candidate for marriage. The conversation among the girls, including Ayase's sister, then turned to gossip about the nature of Ayase's relationship with Nogizaka. When Ayase glanced back at Nogizaka, he saw her expectant look, which embarrassed him when pressed for answers. He quickly diverted by calling Minatsu to check in and learned that Nogizaka's father had spies at the Summer Doujinshi convention and had deployed his personal security team, known as the Hellhounds, to capture Nogizaka. Minatsu estimated they could only hold off for 23 hours and promised to send reinforcements the next day. After the call, Ayase returned to the living room to find everyone asleep from drinking, except for Sakurazaka. She asked Ayase to help Nogizaka to her room and prepared to patrol outside, but ended up bumping into a door. Ayase realized Sakurazaka was drunk when she also fumbled with the refrigerator, though she vehemently denied it. He carried a half-awake Sakurazaka to her room, where she smiled at him, leaving Ayase slightly embarrassed. Ayase quickly returned to his room to rest. Before he could dwell on his thoughts for long, he heard Nogizaka's voice at the door. It turned out that Nogizaka usually slept with a stuffed animal at home and felt secure with Sakurazaka and others patrolling outside. However, the dark, empty room here made her feel frightened, so she wanted to sleep with Ayase. She successfully set up a makeshift bed in Ayase's room. Ayase noticed that Nogizaka was holding an anime magazine, the only thing she had taken when she ran away from home. Nogizaka seemed to cherish the magazine dearly. Outside, Sakurazaka was still bumping into things. Nogizaka asked Ayase if they could hold hands, as her hands were trembling. Ayase was about to start a conversation to comfort her when he realized Nogizaka had already fallen asleep. The next morning, Sakurazaka, who had patrolled all night, spotted a suspicious person on the roof and kicked them down into the courtyard, worried about Nogizaka's safety. Meanwhile, Ayase woke up and found that Nogizaka was no longer on the makeshift bed. He hurried downstairs to look for her and saw her preparing breakfast. Soon, Ayase received a call from Minatsu, who said that Nogizaka's father had discovered where Nogizaka was hiding. Sakurazaka rushed in, ready to help Ayase and the others evacuate. By then, Nogizaka's father had surrounded the house with his troops and even chopped down the front door. Ayase's sister immediately ran out, but was quickly subdued by Nogizaka's father's personal troops. Nogizaka's father grabbed Ayase by the collar and threw him out, urging Nogizaka to come back with him. Nogizaka refused, telling her father that he didn't understand her at all and declared her love for anime. However, her father believed that the well-behaved Nogizaka couldn't possibly be obsessed with anime and accused Ayase of leading her astray, partly because of the magazine Ayase had given her. Ayase woke up and countered Nogizaka's father, questioning why his daughter's interests were deemed vulgar. He pointed out that the father had never tried to understand why his daughter loved anime and dismissed her genuine love for it simply because he looked down on otakus. At that moment, Ayase's sister and Sakurazaka broke through and shielded him. Just as the father was about to lose his temper, Minatsu arrived with the strongest support summoned by Nanami, Nogizaka's mother. Ayase mistook her for Nogizaka's sister. Nogizaka's mother pointed out that Nogizaka had been studying hard and that a small hobby should be supported by a father. The father wanted to argue, but was overpowered by his wife. Nogizaka's mother admitted she didn't understand the hobbies, but if Nogizaka liked them, they must have their reasons, and as parents their job was to support her. The father had no choice but to concede. Nogizaka, having won the argument, immediately hugged Ayase. Nogizaka's mother couldn't help but be moved, while the father was extremely angry, wishing he could immediately chase Ayase away from his precious cabbage. Eventually, Nogizaka's mother took her husband away. Before leaving, Nogizaka's father apologized, admitting his actions were out of concern for his daughter and appreciating Ayase's boldness, though he wasn't ready to accept him yet. After Nogizaka's parents left, Ayase and Nogizaka shared a smile. Minatsu had no real experience with romance but often imagined bizarre scenarios, leading her friends to think she was experienced. Thus, when a boy asked one of them out, her friends immediately turned to Minatsu for advice. Minatsu reluctantly started teaching, tricking her friends due to their lack of experience. On the way home, Minatsu and Nanami lamented that they attended a girls' school with few male contacts. Ayase was the only boy they knew, full of theories but no practice. Minatsu heard from Nanami that after the comic convention incident, Ayase visited Nogizaka again. The two are currently alone, with Nogizaka's parents also at home. Upon learning that Ayase is in his daughter's room, the father becomes too anxious to sit still. However, the mother believes that Nogizaka wouldn't do anything inappropriate without their knowledge. Meanwhile, Minatsu and Nanami have gone home but sneak up to Nogizaka's room door to eavesdrop. They overhear a strange conversation, prompting Minatsu to burst in, exclaiming that such intimacy should only happen after marriage. To their surprise, they find the two making pancakes and preparing servings for everyone. At that moment, Sakurazaka brings in tea. As Ayase sips his tea, he learns that Nogizaka's father supposedly works at the Pentagon, and the conversation shifts from family matters to homework. Ayase and Nogizaka are having a great time, but Minatsu feels their pace is too slow and thinks of ways to push their relationship forward, like initiating a summer activity. So Minatsu, disguising her voice as her sister's, calls Ayase, but he immediately recognizes her. Ayase asks what Minatsu wants, and she invites him to meet on Sunday, deliberately creating chaotic background noise with Nanami and warning that it might be dangerous if he doesn't show up. Consequently, Ayase feels compelled to meet Minatsu on Sunday. Minatsu criticizes Ayase's casual attire, reminding him that it's supposed to be a date, leaving Ayase stunned. Minatsu comments on how dull Sister Nogizaka is, but notes that girls shouldn't be too forward, so they need to start from Ayase's end. She teaches him how to date, emphasizing that just doing homework and chatting isn't enough. They should not wait for the girl to make the first move. Their first stop is a cafe, where Minatsu and Ayase end up embarrassed by their direct gaze. Ayase even saves a falling ice cream parfait, which Minatsu praises, noting no girl dislikes a heroic act. Later, she encourages Ayase to take the initiative to hold hands while walking on the street, advising that if he and Nogizaka go out, he should have the courage to invite her first. Right after she said that, Minatsu fell, but luckily, Ayase caught her. It seems Minatsu's lesson might backfire with her getting flirted with instead. Then, Minatsu took Ayase to a movie, telling him at the theater that this was the time to achieve mutual reliance, but the movie was so boring that they both almost fell asleep. After the movie, Minatsu said the lessons were about done, and she would bring Nogizaka over soon, planning to give them a chance to be alone. Ayase sighed and grabbed Minatsu's hand, telling her not to run around lest someone else takes her away. Minatsu felt a bit embarrassed. Shortly after they left, Ayase ran into his classmate Amamiya, who was also on her way to see the fireworks festival, dressed in a yukata. Minatsu, sensing trouble, quickly pulled Ayase away, postponing the fireworks festival activity. She dragged him to a kimono shop, where she had Ayase change into a new outfit, reminding him to compliment Nogizaka when she appears. The two then went to the fireworks festival together. Minatsu had a great time, and because she was shorter, Ayase carried her so she could see the fireworks. Ayase was grateful to Minatsu for teaching him how to date, which touched Minatsu deeply. She thought to herself, Oh, the irony. I'm a pure love warrior, pushing only my sister's pairing. Fortunately, Minatsu didn't blurt out anything silly. At that moment, Nogizaka also arrived at the festival in a yukata. Meeting up with Ayase and Minatsu, and upon Minatsu's reminder, Ayase quickly complimented Nogizaka on her beauty. They all enjoyed a happy fireworks festival together. Soon after, the new school term began, and their teacher Yukari informed all the students. The cultural festival is coming up at school soon, so one male and one female executive committee member need to be selected. When it came time to take action, everyone became quiet. At this moment, Amamiya volunteered, taking on the role of the female executive committee member. Consequently, Yukari directly assigned the male committee role to Ayase. Amamiya supported the choice of Ayase for the committee. Facing cheers from the whole class, Ayase ultimately accepted the task. The cultural festival required the class to run a small business, so everyone began to choose a project. Suddenly, Asakura from the next class appeared and suggested setting up a cosplay cafe, which would satisfy cosplayers, allow for cute costumes, and include the making of desserts and meals. It seemed like a no-lose situation. Following Asakura's persuasion, everyone quickly voted for the cosplay cafe, but the specific project details were still undecided. While discussing with Nogizaka, Ayase learned that Asakura had failed to get votes in his own class and had come to persuade Ayase's class instead. Nogizaka found the idea of a cosplay cafe interesting. Ayase initially thought the cosplay cafe was similar to the maid cafes in Akihabara, but Asakura clarified it was not the same. Nogizaka was very intrigued and tried to help Ayase, but before she could speak, Amamiya arrived and took Ayase away for a meeting, leaving Nogizaka feeling lonely. Each year, their college's cultural festival includes a beauty contest to crown the school's most beautiful girl. Nogizaka initially didn't want to participate, but upon seeing Ayase by the roadside, she wanted to greet him. However, she noticed Ayase was very close to Amamiya and felt it was inappropriate to interrupt. After returning, Nogizaka told Minatsu about Ayase being appointed as an executive committee member. Minatsu was a bit disappointed that Nogizaka wasn't Ayase's partner, as it would have been a good opportunity for them to grow closer, especially since Nogizaka had even prepared a proposal for it. Nogizaka felt a bit embarrassed and said she just wanted to help. Minatsu encouraged Nogizaka to bravely pursue what she wants. My goodness, what does Ayase have that makes him worth chasing? She wondered. If I remember correctly, Nogizaka is an heir to a multi-billion fortune. It's maddening that such a beauty is chasing him. I wouldn't even dare to dream of it. And Minatsu also advised Nogizaka to bring some comforting gifts while Ayase is working and reminded her to dance with Ayase at the cultural festival in the evening. Feeling shy, Nogizaka nevertheless gathered her courage the next day to invite Ayase. But she found out Ayase was busy with committee work alongside Amamiya. Just as Nogizaka felt disheartened, Ayase hurried back and told her that the cafe's decor was decided, but the cosplay costumes were still unclear. Remembering Nogizaka's interest in this area, Ayase believed she might know something. Delighted, Nogizaka told Ayase she could help, and they agreed to visit a cosplay store together on Sunday. However, Nogizaka's expression was complex, unnoticed by Ayase. On Sunday, Akihabara was crowded as they headed to the cosplay store. Nogizaka informed Ayase that the store also did custom orders and that the costumes they saw were just standard ones, but each was finely crafted. It was Nogizaka's first time seeing these costumes in person. They were not there to buy, since their budget didn't allow for one costume each. Instead, they were just checking out styles to prepare for a group DIY project. Nogizaka recommended a few designs, like a complex-looking but easy-to-make beautiful skirt, including one from a character Nogizaka liked. The clerk suggested Nogizaka try it on. Unable to resist, Nogizaka changed in the dressing room and coincidentally met Ayase, who had just returned with some materials. Ayase was stunned, complimenting Nogizaka, saying she looked like a real angel. Just then, Ayase heard his friend Asakura's voice and quickly hid with Nogizaka in the changing room. In the cramped space alone together, the atmosphere heated up quickly. It almost turned into a scene like those in Uniqlo videos. However, Asakura left shortly after, interrupting their close moment. After leaving the cosplay store, Ayase gave Nogizaka a music box figurine as a thank you gift for bringing him to the store. Just when the mood was right between them, Ayase received a call from Minatsu, who urged him to quickly take Nogizaka away because her father was on his way. It turned out that Nogizaka had promised her father to meet a piano master that Sunday, but she skipped it to be with Ayase, angering her father. As soon as the call ended, her father arrived on the scene. Ayase tried to defend Nogizaka, claiming he forced her to go out with him, which led her father to decide to reprimand Ayase. At that moment, Nanami Sakurazaka also arrived, and unexpectedly, Minatsu brought Nogizaka's mother to the scene. Nogizaka's mother, finding her husband too impulsive, knocked him out with a karate chop and prepared to hear why Nogizaka had stood them up, especially since they had discussed the importance of pursuing her interests diligently. Nogizaka apologized, explaining she was very happy because Ayase had asked for her help for the first time, and she wanted to assist him. She acknowledged it was wrong to miss the meeting with her father, but today was also significant for her, and she wanted to help Ayase no matter what. Nogizaka admitted it was all her fault. Ayase then stepped forward, saying it was his fault for not checking if Nogizaka was free. Nogizaka's mother, interrupting their mutual blame, understood their feelings for each other, but reiterated the trouble Nogizaka caused her teacher and father. Nogizaka acknowledged her mistake, and her mother decided to make an exception this time, warning there must not be a next time. This finally relieved Minatsu. Ayase, grateful for Nogizaka's help, asked if she needed any help in return. Nogizaka shyly asked if Ayase could dance with her at the cultural festival's evening dance. Both felt a bit embarrassed, but the scene was filled with laughter and cheer, except for Nogizaka's father, who was still upset. Later, Ayase and Nogizaka took the cosplay design book back home. Amamiya remarked on how great the collection was, and soon their classmates began to get busy. Asakura also came to help in Ayase's class. The preparation days flew by quickly. After returning home, Nogizaka happily gazed at the music box. The next day, she decided to make desserts for Ayase and excitedly went to find him in the afternoon, only to find Ayase seemingly tackling Amamiya. With one day left until the cultural festival's opening ceremony, Ayase and Amamiya stayed in the classroom to set up the final decorations. Amamiya complimented Ayase for being a good man, but then a coffee sign fell from above. Ayase quickly pushed Amamiya away, accidentally falling on him, creating an awkward scene, especially as Nogizaka arrived just in time to witness it. Shocked, she turned and left. Amamiya urged Ayase to chase after her. Ayase quickly followed Nogizaka, who said she understood it might have been an accident, but confessed she felt jealous. Thinking about this brought her to tears, and she quickly said goodbye and left. Amamiya teased Ayase for not chasing after her to apologize. Ayase wanted to call Nogizaka, but was answered by Sakurazaka, who mentioned Nogizaka had already gone to bed. Sakurazaka hesitated to say more, but ended up saying nothing. The next day, Ayase intended to explain everything to Nogizaka, but found her already dressed in her cosplay outfit and greeting him as usual. Ayase felt something was off, but didn't dwell on it, mistakenly thinking Nogizaka had gotten over it, not realizing that a woman's silence might be more ominous. Nogizaka's fans asked her if she was participating in the beauty contest this time. Amamiya also remarked that indeed Nogizaka was entering the contest. Today, Amamiya was playing the role of a little devil, the opposite of Nogizaka's little angel character, and was also competing in the beauty pageant. It was said that only the top 8 students voted by the entire school could make it to the finals, and these 8 were outstanding in various aspects. Amamiya mentioned that the event would take place in the gymnasium and reminded Ayase to make sure to visit. Amamiya, being somewhat smarter than Ayase, noticed that something was off with Nogizaka and deduced that she and Ayase hadn't resolved their issues. Soon, Ayase also realized something was wrong because, during the first half of the cultural festival, Nogizaka had been busy to avoid being alone with him, which made him feel somewhat downhearted. Eventually, Nogizaka even took a rest alone. At that time, Minatsu, along with Nanami and Sakurazaka, came to visit. Ayase noticed Sakurazaka's unusual gaze, though she said little. After sitting down, Minatsu asked Ayase if the desserts made by Nogizaka were tasty, causing his face to flush as he recalled Nogizaka leaving the previous afternoon. Minatsu thought Ayase was just shy, which is why he hesitated to mention it. Hearing that Ayase was about to take a break, Minatsu and Nanami planned to have him join them for a walk around the school, but Sakurazaka did not follow. Soon, the beauty contest began, and Nogizaka won the crown without any surprises. When she looked up and saw Ayase greeting her from the audience, she burst into tears. Seeing this, Ayase immediately rushed backstage, planning to clarify the misunderstanding from the previous day. However, Nogizaka was unusually resistant to recalling that moment. Ayase tried to catch up with Nogizaka but realized she had already fled. He regretted not noticing her distress sooner. While searching for her, he encountered Amamiya, who shyly asked him to dance. Seeing Ayase's uneasy expression, Amamiya quickly said she had already made plans with another friend. It was unclear how things would develop between them. Ayase then turned and went to look for Nogizaka. Soon after, Sakurazaka approached Ayase, revealing she knew about their situation. She knew where Nogizaka was hiding, but wanted to clarify Ayase's relationship with Nogizaka first. Sakurazaka needed Ayase to be clear about his feelings towards Nogizaka. She didn't expect him to always prioritize Nogizaka, but she hoped he wouldn't make the wrong choice. Sakurazaka had loved someone 3 years ago, but had made a bad decision because she hadn't understood her own feelings, resulting in her loved one leaving. She didn't want Ayase to make the same mistake. After receiving Ayase's promise, Sakurazaka told him that Nogizaka was hiding behind the gymnasium. By then, the dance had already started. Ayase found Nogizaka behind the gym, holding the music box he had given her. He brought up yesterday's incident and apologized. Nogizaka said it wasn't his fault. She didn't know why, but seeing Ayase and another girl together yesterday had made her upset and pained. Once she realized it, she ran out, feeling like she had lost something very important. It was the first time Nogizaka had felt such emotions, yet she didn't want Ayase to worry, so she forced a smile for him. She feared losing him. Ayase assured her he would never leave unless she wanted him to. Then, Nogizaka embraced him and cried. After her tears, as the school event was ending, they parted ways. Ayase and Nogizaka wanted to dance even though the music had stopped. They had a music box, didn't they? The two danced behind the empty gym. Minatsu and 2 others might have snuck into the bushes to watch. Minatsu gossiped about Sakurazaka's past, revealing that her cherished, loved one was actually a doll she had since reclaimed. Today, Minatsu called Ayase to remind him of Nogizaka's birthday on October 20th, stressing the importance of not forgetting it. On their way to school, Ayase subtly asked Nogizaka if there was anything she wanted. The items she needed were either ubiquitous or protected animals, which Ayase couldn't possibly give without ending up in jail. They switched to discussing anime, and as they neared the school, Ayase reminded Nogizaka to drop the subject. Entering the classroom, Ayase suddenly thought Nogizaka resembled a character from her favorite anime, sparking an idea for a gift. By the weekend, Ayase went alone to Akihabara, reflecting on their first date and becoming sentimental. He planned to buy Nogizaka a figurine but was unsure about the quality. Fortunately, he ran into his friend Asakura, who helped him choose a well-painted, authentic action figure as a gift. Asakura and Ayase reminisced about their childhood visits to Akihabara. Asakura recalled entrusting Ayase with a book he had bought, which Ayase unknowingly gave away. Ayase only remembered enduring Asakura's antics, while Asakura was upset about the book, which had since become out of print and unavailable until the school library restocked it. When Asakura mentioned the book's title, Ayase was taken aback. Going back a few years, it was around 5 or 6 years ago when Nogizaka first got the magazine. Ayase wasn't sure if he was the one who gave it to her. He walked home puzzled, only to be dragged into a car by Sakurazaka and Nanami. Ayase thought the party was in the evening, but Sakurazaka shook her head, saying they needed to go early to a venue specially arranged for Nogizaka's birthday. Therefore, Ayase, his sister, and teacher Yukari were all pulled onto a plane. Ayase was completely shocked when they landed on a small island. He almost threw up stepping off the plane. Minatsu then told him that this deserted island on the equator was purchased by Nogizaka's father for her birthday and that tycoons from various countries were invited. Even the planes at the airport were there to transport gifts from Nogizaka's father, making Ayase doubt the significance of the figurine he bought. Nogizaka ran out happily to greet Ayase, who didn't know how to face her. He should have realized earlier that being a young lady of her status, she never held it against him. Now he felt insecure at this moment, He should have pursued her earlier and shown his ambition. Ayase felt disoriented and went to the beach, where he met an old man with a straw hat, who had lost his beloved fishing hook. Ayase helped the old man look for it. The old man inquired about Ayase's relationship with Nogizaka. Ayase hesitated, but eventually said they were classmates. The old man gave Ayase a strange look. Just then, Minatsu arrived with Nanami and Sakurazaka, and the old man suggested Ayase go join them. As soon as Ayase left, the old man spotted the fishing hook right where Ayase had been standing. Minatsu also removed Nanami and Sakurazaka's maid outfits. Ayase turned around to see Nogizaka charging towards him in a swimsuit, blushing all over. They then happily played by the seaside. During this time, Ayase accidentally bumped into Minatsu and unhooked her swimsuit. While Ayase and Nogizaka were chasing each other, Nogizaka accidentally stepped into a hole and sank to the bottom of the water. Ayase quickly rescued her. Yukari checked on Nogizaka and declared she needed artificial respiration, signaling the other girls to watch. Everyone looked on with amusement as Ayase was urged to give mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Just as their lips were about to meet, Nogizaka woke up, and both turned as red as cooked crabs. Unbeknownst to them, a suitor of Nogizaka's was watching through binoculars. Before the dinner started, Sakurazaka took Nogizaka away to change into a gown. After bidding farewell to Ayase, he turned the corner and encountered a group of wealthy young masters who mocked him for having neither power nor wealth, unlike their gifts of expensive jewelry and dresses. They emphasized that the most important part of a gift is to make the recipient happy. They belittled Ayase thoroughly and told him to leave the party early, which shook his confidence. Ayase looked at his figurine, hesitant to speak up. "You've come this far. Why lose confidence now?" He thought about showing the figurine to win Nogizaka's heart. Nogizaka then appeared at the banquet in her gown as the heiress of a multi-billionaire family, receiving warm applause from the guests, and her parents also entered the hall. Ayase stood outside, lost in thought, as Nogizaka scanned the audience and did not see him, looking disappointed. At that moment, Minatsu arrived late with Nanami and saw Ayase hesitating at the entrance. She quickly pulled him into the banquet. Meanwhile, the maids brought in a huge birthday cake, and amidst everyone's congratulations, Nogizaka aged another year. Minatsu brought Ayase to the front to send blessings to Nogizaka. She reminded Ayase to speak loudly. Nogizaka smiled upon hearing Ayase's voice. Then, Minatsu handed Ayase a number, because there were too many people giving gifts, all hoping to gain Nogizaka's favor. Thus, a draw was needed to decide the order of gift-giving. Ayase saw his sister drinking again, and turned to leave, but accidentally ran into the group of noble sons. They noticed Ayase hadn't left, and snatched the gift he had prepared for Nogizaka. During the struggle, they accidentally tore the outer layer of the wrapping. The nobles mocked Ayase's gift as cheap and uninteresting, and did not allow him to pick it up, boasting that they were giving luxury cars and dresses worthy of Nogizaka. They ridiculed his figurine gift and urged him to leave. Ayase then realized the class difference between himself and Nogizaka and was about to leave dejectedly with his gift when an old man he had met at the beach stopped him. The old man sighed, asking if he was leaving just like that, and questioned whether he was mistaken in his judgment. He noted that the first friend Nogizaka ever brought home thought he was an unwelcome guest. Holding the figurine, Ayase started to respond, realizing that he had felt mismatched with Nogizaka from the start. She was an heir to a multi-billion fortune, and he was just from an ordinary family. However, Nogizaka had never mentioned status or position and had always treated him sincerely. Realizing her genuine nature and her secret love for anime and related merchandise, Ayase decided not to care about others' opinions. With renewed courage, Ayase stepped forward with his gift, but the nobles tried to take his place to give their gifts to Nogizaka first. Nogizaka politely responded to them. Just then, Ayase finally reached the front. The nobles mocked Ayase, but he ignored them and presented his gift to Nogizaka. The nobles thought such a gift was not fit for display, but Nogizaka's joyful smile proved them wrong. She was clearly pleased with the gift, surprising everyone present, as it was rare to see her so satisfied with a gift. At that moment, Nogizaka's parents also greeted Ayase. Nogizaka's father mentioned it was her birthday and casually shook hands with Ayase, which sparked further discussion among the crowd, wondering if Ayase had been accepted. A noble son complained to his father about the situation. However, the old man Ayase had met at the beach, who turned out to be Nogizaka's grandfather and the true patriarch of the family, intervened. He cherished his granddaughter and believed that the value of the gift didn't matter as long as she liked it. The noble son dismissed the grandfather as a poor servant, not realizing his own father would respect the old man and reprimand him for his disrespectful words. Only then did Ayase learn about the grandfather's true position in the Nogizaka family. The grandfather seemed pleased with Ayase, which improved Nogizaka's father's attitude towards him. After the party, Nogizaka invited Ayase to her room to show him her cherished magazines and figurines. Ayase recalled giving a manga magazine to a crying girl in a park years ago, realizing that girl was Nogizaka. They both laughed at the coincidence, and as they were laughing, they fell onto the bed and kissed, right when everyone else barged into the room. While the crowd watched, Nogizaka's father almost lost his temper, but Ayase and Nogizaka eloped. In summary, this is a classic otaku fantasy scenario. If someone says this is the fantasy of an otaku before being blown up by an Oppo A5, just ignore them and let me tell the story.